All right, we are live. Welcome to our Charm School for the week. Today is April 4th, something like that. Yep. And today's topic is going to be Juju plugins, and I'm joined here with Marco Ceppi. Go ahead and wave.
Hey, everybody.
And Peter Petrakis, which mostly me just listening in. So, we will be taking questions in #Juju on Freenode. And let's just get started right away. Marco Ceppi, what is a Juju plugin? How does it relate to Charms? Why do I care? What does this do for me? I've heard of Juju, I've heard of Charms. What are plugins?
Let me tell you about plugins. So plugins have nothing to do with Charms directly.
Okay.
So think of it this way. Plugins are just as you'd think it would be. You have this awesome Juju command line tool, but you want to do something that doesn't quite do already. You can build a plugin to make this seemingly native experience of saying Juju space the name of your plugin and have it execute. Git, Bazaar, Mercurial, a lot of other tools do very similar things where you can create plugins for these tools and have them run in your command line so you can distribute them to others. Juju has the same thing. I'm going to talk about exactly how to make one and the cool plugins that exist already.
Okay, so this is basically not something that you would exactly help you with writing a charm or anything, but this would be useful if you're deploying with Juju or if you're using Juju on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So we actually have a couple plugins that help you write charms, but mostly it's for you using Juju. It's you doing you.
Okay. All right. Well, share your terminal and let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and mute here, and Marco's going to take it away. I'll be fielding questions from #Juju, or feel free to ping me directly. All right. You ready?
Awesome. So just to start, there's actually quite a few plugins that are already out there that you may not even realize are plugins. Juju Quick Start is a plugin. Doesn't come as part of core. You install it separately and it installs in the Juju namespace. As well, there's Juju Deployer, which also deploys in this Juju namespace. Charm Tools also uses Juju namespace. Juju Charm is not a native command to Juju. All those are plugins, but they're kind of big. They're big encompassing projects that kind of run separately. There's also the Juju DigitalOcean kind of plugin that we have where it mocks as a provider if it's not quite a provider. So plugins are very powerful in what you can do with them. Really the limit is how far you can code. They are language agnostic, so you can write plugins in any language. As long as it's an executable file, it'll work. So how do you find out what plugins you have? Well, Juju has this great command called Juju Help Plugins. But what this will do is, as soon as it comes back, it gave me an error on one of these old ones, but that's okay. It'll give you a list of all the plugins that are available, and you can then go through and see what they are, the descriptions, etc. So I've got quite a few on here. Some of them come bundled as part of core. Some of them are ones that I've installed or created separately. There's Backup Bundle, Charm, Clean, Debug, Deployer, Metadata, pprint, Quick Start, Restore. These are just a list of all these that are installed. On a clean machine, you'll probably see a far smaller list, maybe one or two things that are not quite in core but are provided as plugins that get bundled as core. There's also a brief description on how to implement plugins. Basically, you need a file somewhere in path that has Juju minus the name of the plugin. So that's why you see Juju Deployer, Juju Quick Start. They are in my path, installed in user bin, and they have the name Juju minus Quick Start and Juju minus Deployer. So that's really all a plugin is. That's what you need to know for a plugin. This is all the plugins that I have installed, and you can run Juju Help Plugins. What's also great is, just like with any command, so if you type Juju Help Bootstrap, it tells you everything you need to know about bootstrapping. If I type Juju Help Deployer, it tells me everything about that plugin. So it also builds in native help support for that plugin, so you get that kind of seamless experience. So another one would be Juju Help Quick Start. And that gives you everything you need to know about this plugin. So it also follows the same semantics as if you were a user. You want to know how to run something, you just run Juju Help in that command, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about it. These are things that are being provided by the plugin. We actually have a document page that describes how to create plugins. Really, the two things you need is it needs to know how to do the description flag and the help flag so that these kind of native commands work. Otherwise, you're ready to go. So I'm going to run through a couple of small plugins that exist to show you kind of the different things you can do with plugins. Then we'll take some questions. We'll maybe write a plugin if we have some time. I can show you different stuff, and then that'll be about it. And we'll look at some of these general structures. So one plugin that I wrote specifically because I use it a lot is when I'm running code or setting up deployments, I always watch Juju status. The problem with this is if you have a lot of machines deployed, the watch only shows you maybe the top 1/3 of that bar, and then it becomes kind of hard to see, well, I want to see the status of what's on machine 2, and I really can't do that. So there's a plugin called pprint. So if you run pprint, it gives you a very flat output of your environment. So I have Ganglia MySQL. Those are the units. It has the IP addresses and the ports and their states all in one line. So if I were to run juju add unit MySQL, I can then run watch pprint, and I can watch to find out when it's ready. So it shows I have MySQL 1 and it's pending, and over time that'll progress from pending to installing, started, etc., and it'll display the information from there. So that's an example of a helper that I find convenient for my everyday use. I'm running this plugin in order to keep me. I have this set up in the corner of my screen as a terminal. I can just kind of watch my output status and know when things are in a ready and started state in my environment. Other plugins that exist are ones that you can use a lot for debugging. So let me think of a charm that's broken. I wish I deployed a charm earlier. I could have made a broken charm. Oh, perfect. So I'm just going to real quickly make this dummy charm. Let's say I'm hacking on a charm or something. Hooks. And I'm just going to do... Actually, that's perfect. Juju deploy repository is up 1 local foo. I'm also going to deploy this to my environment real quickly. I can go ahead and watch Juju pprint. We'll come back to this in just a second, but it's pending. It's coming up in a few minutes. It'll be in an errored state. I can show you some other plugins that exist around that. But let's go back up to some more plugin outputs when we talk about other plugins. So the pprint one is pretty straightforward and simple. It's actually part of a larger collection of very small plugins, these kind of one-off plugins, like Deployer, Quick Start, Charm. Those are all really huge projects that encompass multiple files. They have their own packaging. They have their own versioning. Pprint's just a very quick little dirty script that was written, and I can actually show you what that looks like. But before I do that, I want to point you to this repo where it's on github.com/juju/plugins. We've been trying to collect a bunch of these little tidbits, these little convenience plugins into one repo, and then from here we plan to hopefully grow out the plugins project to be a little more accessible. It includes how to install these plugins, how to update them, how to verify them, and actually how to write your own plugins briefly, the requirements for that. So the pprint one is one that's written in Python. So it's just a Python script that essentially runs Juju status, parses it, and then collapses the output for you. So this is an example of that, and it just implements very, very dirty fashion, very quick fashion, the description and the help flag for outputting. And that's all you really need is these two flags in your charm in order for it to run. Another plugin that's a little easier to read is this Juju Clean. On some of the development releases, the local provider can end up in a somewhat dirty state. So this clean is a very quick and easy little cleanup script that allows you to, let me bump the size up a little bit, that allows you to go through and pretty much clean up any of the remaining artifacts. The bug for this has since been fixed, but this was a stopgap until that bug was addressed in Juju Core, as we had this clean plugin that allowed you to go through and just run the destroy environment and then also clean up the JM file and anything else that was left behind. Now there's a force flag with destroy environment, which will clean up corrupted environments. So that's been addressed in Juju Core, and that's really what the plugin project was born, is these set of conveniences that are either features that would potentially end up in Juju Core eventually, or that are so niche to you and maybe a few other people that it's nice to have this convenience function that you can pass around, but may or may not ever end up in Juju Core, kind of like a piloting program for features in the future. So that's really it for plugins. They can be written in Ruby, Shell, you can write them in Python, whatever is executable as long as the file's executable. So if you have plugins, or if you're looking to write plugins, or you have an idea for a plugin and you write one, feel free to dump it in this repo. Other people can share and collaborate around it. The Juju debug one is one that I also use a lot for demos, as well as myself when I'm writing charms. A lot of times when you have a charm in an error state, let's and again, leveraging the power of plugins, my foo unit is in error simply because I broke the install hook. What you could do is you can run Juju debug foo/0, and what this will do is it will launch in another window a debug hook session, and then mark the charm as resolved in one workflow. So now I have debug hooks, which you don't know about. It's an amazing command that allows you to interactively run commands in the context of a hook. And in order to initiate this from an error state, you have to run resolved. So this does both those in kind of one felt swoop. So now I'm in the install hook for foo.
Nice.
Yeah, I can go in and make all my changes.
I've been doing this all week, and I wish I would have known about this. Oh, man.
So I can go and fix this, which is obviously broken, and I can run hooks install, and it works properly, and I can go ahead and just follow through the event loop and exit. And now when I run pprint, I have a unit that's started and good to go, and that one command kind of did two things. So it was really convenience function. It just more or less, let me go back to my window here. More or less just goes through and runs exactly what you want, opens X terminal emulator, and then tries to resolve the unit and retry it. So really plugins are the spectrum of what you want it to be, from things like this, which make your life one command easier, or an entire new suite of features that are added to Juju Core that aren't quite there yet, like with the Juju Quick Start, which is this fantastic tool that makes managing and deploying workloads in the Juju as easy as 1 to 2 commands and really nothing more than that. And there's also the Juju DigitalOcean provider, which builds an entire provider around Juju without actually having to write any code and go. It's kind of this cool idea where you can use the manual provider and the API of a service and write code around that. In addition, there's also Charm Tools, which is the ability to create and get running with charms and managing charms and bundles in your environment. All those are written as plugins to Juju. With the exception of maybe the DigitalOcean provider, neither of them will ever become a part of Core, but they're essential to the ecosystem of making things successful. And so that's kind of what these plugins are, is the ability for people to success their way into using Juju. A couple other convenience plugins that have been written in the repo. Juju Set All. It's kind of like a shotgun effect. Imagine running Juju Set for a key value across all of your nodes and all your services in a deployed environment. It'll do it whether or not the key exists. So, for instance, there's maybe a version, or you want to apply a repo across all of them for the ones that accept a source. You can do something like Juju Set All source equals cloud precise Havana. This is used a lot, I guess, with the OpenStack guys, where you can actually tune which version of OpenStack you're using. That'll run Juju Set across all of them. So that's what you get for the output. I don't think any of these charms actually have a source flag, but if they did, it was now set, and the charm is now reconfiguring itself. So that's another convenience. Instead of having to go and run Juju Set, this basically loops that for you. Again, just another minor little convenience one. There's also a Juju Git charm, which is an awesome plugin that was contributed by one of the community members. That goes through and makes managing a charm in Git a little easier for you, and how to actually be able to version that charm in Git against a various series of Ubuntu and manage the lifecycle of that Git charm as a first-class citizen. So that plugin also exists in here. Like I said, we welcome all sorts of different types of plugins in this repo, as well as in general. But plugins are this cool tool that not a lot of people know about, and it can really enhance your workflow with Juju by just writing a couple of scripts to kind of streamline stuff. And I know a lot of people are writing scripts already. This just adds a little bit of structure around that and the ability to share with others. Cool. That's about all I have for plugins, unless you guys have any questions.
Yeah, so I've done a little installation here. seems pretty simple. If I want to update my plugins, I can just cd into .juju-plugins and do a git pull, right?
Right. It covers that right here. Yeah. So
Yep.
you just yeah, just go into the .juju plugins directory, run git pull, and that'll pull the latest version of the plugins down.
Okay.
As we grow this repo and kind of grow the concept of having community contributed plugins, in addition to the big ones like DigitalOcean Provider and Quick Start, we might look to make like a little plugins repo website, kind of like we see on NPM and other plugin-based systems. But for now, this is kind of our proof of concept for plugins. So there might be a better updating mechanism in the future, or a better tool to manage these on your system, where you could install individual ones instead of this get them all at once kind of thing.
Okay. Well, they're not that huge. I think it's sort of like the proving ground, right? If a plugin seemed
exactly.
like at the time, I find out nobody likes it.
Yeah.
Right. pprint I could use today. Juju which is the debug hook one? Yeah, that one I could use all week. Because usually what people do, how Matt and I have been doing it, is you open one window, you do debug hooks there, and then you're doing the resolve retry in another window or another tab, which gets really annoying.
Right. I got tired of having to open new terminals every time I want to do a resolve, so I just said, okay, I'm just going to write a plugin. That's where I'm looking around.
Peter's asking for questions in the channel. None yet. Do we have time to write a plugin? Are you in the mood to write a plugin?
Yeah, we can totally write a plugin. Name some of the problems you guys have been having.
Sure. I don't get debug. I don't get logs on the local provider. Is there a way you could just tail all machines.log or something for me?
Yes. We could totally do something like that. In fact,
that's simple enough?
Yeah, let's do that. That's a good one. That's a good one because I can write that one.
Yeah. I've been thinking, can you tell?
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and just fork the repo on GitHub. So I need to actually go sign in for a second. So fork it. I've already forked it. Here's my fork of it. Ta-da! So I'm going to go ahead and pull the project down real quickly. All right. So I'm just going to make a new directory here. Yeah. Git clone this repo. Cool. I'm going to make a new branch just so I can kind of keep track of this. Oops. So git checkout. Oh yeah, local logs. I got a new branch. I'm just going to make a new file called Juju. I don't know. You want to do debug local?
Just call log all or something.
Logs. Yeah, we can do that. We can do it. We can do a check if you're on local environment or not. It'll run debug logs, or it'll run the tail on local.
Yeah.
So a little bit of shedding there. We're gonna write it in Bash because I love Bash. This is where we put copyright information. I'll fill that in later.
Sean's asking, any plans on the Juju test plugin supporting all of the manual provider? He's trolling.
Yeah, the Juju test plugin is part of Charm Tools, and we definitely have plans to support manual provider. Manual provisioning is a very special use case in Juju in general, so as a result, it requires a little bit of thinking.
And if he's used Juju test and finds it useful, he might even do some merge proposals. Look at that.
Well, of course, with Charm Tools and with the plugins project and everything else in the ecosystems, merge proposals are always welcome. I don't reject them. Mm-hmm. So for real simple stuff, we're going to say if Marco can remember how to write code.
You don't even need to check if it's local. For this simple example, just...
Well, you need to implement the two basic flags, which I will look up real quickly.
So out of all of these, is this the Hello World one you want people to rip off here? Clean?
The clean one is probably the simplest.
Okay.
One of the simplest. Actually, debug is probably the simplest.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't actually take any parameters.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this chunk of code because it is copyrighted as GPLv3, and I also own the copyright, so I can do that. So this sets up the description and the help flag capturing, which are important in order for it to work as a proper plugin.
I see.
So it's called Juju Logs. And we'll fill something in here good. Don't follow my example by leaving stuff blank.
Got it.
And we'll not have a unit. We'll just say you're going to get the tail log. So essentially what will happen is you'll get tail f home dot, well, actually it should be, we'll make this better in a second. So that local logs, that essentially gives you all of the unit logs in general. If you wanted to, you could just do all.log, which would be everything, including the machine logs, which may or may not be a little too verbose for you. So that's it. We just got to make this executable. And now we've written our first Juju Logs command. I don't think I have Juju local bootstrapped. Bootstrap.
I think you've got Mongo.
Yeah. I've got a couple of jobs running, I think. Let's just go ahead and do a little bit of manual cleanup. How many times am I going to do that today? A great plugin would be me making Bootstrap actually alias to Bootstrap, considering how often I make that mistake on a daily basis. So yeah, so we have a local provider. Now I should be able to do Juju. Well, next thing I do is actually update my path so that it's in the right place. So path is home/temp/plugins, where I put the repo that I'm working on, and path. Proper path separators, always important. So now I should be able to do Juju Logs. Good gracious, what did I do wrong? Oh, I broke everything. That's what I did wrong. Let's kill this terminal window. That never happened. Okay, one more time. This time with the proper home, home/temp/plugins, path, export this. Now I should have a Juju Logs. There we go. So it's giving me some error saying it can't actually tail logs. So let's take a look at what I did wrong. So Juju, I think it's just log. It is just log. Okay. So go back, open up my Juju Logs.
It's not always going to be called local either. It's going to be whatever you name that environment, right?
Right. So that's the second thing we need to do is do some proper checks. So I'm going to really quick, I'm going to make sure this works at a checkpoint. Yeah, so now I'm tailing a bunch of stuff. This will get progressively larger and more interesting as I deploy services. But for proof of concept, that's essentially what debug log does. Actually, what would be even better, since oh, you know what? This is actually an even better idea. As of 1.17.7, it now has an all logs file, which is essentially what we need a tail to begin with. I think it's all log. Someone is going to have to correct me.
I'll look.
It is all machines. That's what it is. I think that's the log that correlates everything over time.
Yep. All-machines.log. But I don't think that log exists until after you've deployed something, after Bootstrap.
No, it shows. I haven't deployed anything on local. I have machine 0 and all machines, so I think this will work.
Okay.
Let me just make that all machines for the time being. Okay, and then I'm going to do some quick checking. So to get the current environment, there's either going to be an E flag or it's going to be, really you should parse the E flag, but it doesn't always happen to be the case. So instead what I'm going to do is just take the current environment, which is stored in the Juju home directory / current environment. So
good idea. Because you know that's always set regardless of the environment variable, correct? Actually, yeah, that's a pretty horrible assumption on my part.
Environment. End is not a good idea for that. There we go.
Call it current or something. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's even better actually. So some more tomfoolery would have to happen to get the actual. Oh no, that's where it goes. My apologies. So this is just cur-env. Really, we should check to see if cur-env actually exists. So if it's not a local provider, it'll error out. So we can say something like if directory home juju cur-env log. That won't exist if it's not local. So if that exists, then we know it's a local provider. Otherwise, we could just say Juju debug log.
Right. Then the plugin becomes a fancy alias.
Right. So as a convenience, it'll work across all environments, but it'll be consistent across technically consistent across all environments.
Right.
Let's clean up a little bit. Let's give this a go. So I'm going to run Juju Logs. Ready, wrong. Oh. Yes, I have to remember how to write code first. Cool. So now we're tailing this log. The log will grow over time as I deploy stuff. Let's just go ahead and say Juju deploy. It's a good standalone app. Minecraft. Sure. So that's going to deploy. In a few seconds, this will start bumping up. I wish I was in Biovo. I could split windows real quickly. Oh, there we go. So now it's going to start doing things. It's going to start creating machines for me. Stuff will start spinning past. I can also Juju switch to HPC test. And then I can run Juju logs. And this will actually drop me into Juju debug logs, which is essentially the same results now. The format may be slightly different, but I'm getting my debug logs. So this is an HP cloud environment that I bootstrapped, so that switching is working back and forth now. I'm getting the output from here instead. So that's a plugin. So for the last bits, I want to actually contribute this. I want someone to go look at it. I need to run git status. I see I haven't added it, so git add Juju logs, git commit. I'm gonna git push it to my origin. Called it local logs. So I'm gonna push it up my branch, and now I'm free to create a merge request. So it says local logs. I do a compare and pull request. And that'll show up in the queue, and someone will come by and review it and make sure it's good. And if it's good and it doesn't break anyone's system or does anything too bad, they'll merge it in, and then anyone who runs the install from that point forward, or anyone who has it installed and runs the update, will get the Juju Logs command.
And you'll merge this right after this so that anybody could just... I go into my Juju plugins directory, do a git pull, and I'm good to go, right?
Yep, I will clean it up a little bit, of course, add the proper little copyright field so people know who wrote the plugin. You can see all the examples of those headers and other plugins that exist. Git Charm was written by Joshua Strobel, so he has his Apache 2 license version of his plugin. Most of the ones that I've written, I think, are GPL v3. So it follows the same requirements as the charms. They must be an open source license, but outside of that, there's no limit really to how you want to license it. We prefer you put it in the copyright header. Otherwise, that's it. Go have forth and write plugins. If you have ideas for plugins, you could open them up as bugs against the project. Right. Say, hey, I've got a really cool idea for a plugin. Write it here if you don't have the technical expertise to write it, and maybe someone else from the community will pick it up and give it a go.
And it's a nice way to whip up a nice little workaround. For example, logging being broken, right? We were deploying, and then we had another, and we'd always have to switch back, to tailing the log, and you always forget, and you're trying to autocomplete. So there's a nice little workaround. And then when they fix that in core, we can just remove the plugin, and everything will be fine.
Exactly. So, like we were saying, plugins are new features that may never end up in core, workarounds to existing bugs and features, things just to make your life easier while you're using Juju.
Yes.
That's kind of the goal of the plugins project, and plugins in general.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks, Marco, for this little bit of help. As always, you can find us on #Juju on Freenode, and we'll go ahead and get this plugin published, and then have a good weekend, everyone.